In a quiet, peaceful town, there was a family living in a calm corner of the city. Among them was a 12-year-old boy named Ethan, who was in the 6th grade. Ethan was a lively and energetic kid who loved to be outside, and his favorite thing to do was play soccer. Almost every day after school, Ethan would go to a nearby public field and practice his soccer skills. One afternoon after coming back from school, Ethan dropped onto the couch, looking lost in thought. He opened one of his school books, stared at it briefly, and then leaned back, clearly not happy. His father, who had just come in from the backyard, noticed Ethan's unusual behavior. Curious, he sat down beside his son and asked what was bothering him. Ethan explained that he had received a bad grade in math, but that wasn't what was really making him upset. He told his father that his friend and neighbor, Alex, always seemed to get high scores in math no matter what. Ethan felt frustrated because no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't do as well as Alex. Hearing this, Ethan's father left for a moment to get a glass of water to help calm his son. Once Ethan had relaxed a bit, his father took him outside to their small garden, which was filled with trees and had a peaceful atmosphere. As they stood there, his father said, "Ethan, I want you to learn 3 important lessons from today. These lessons will help you as you grow older." Ethan, who had great respect for his father, was curious but confused. "Can you explain the lessons, Dad?" he asked. "You'll learn each lesson through a challenge I'll give you," his father replied with a gentle smile. "For the first lesson, I want you to invite Alex to play soccer with you tomorrow." Ethan agreed, eager to find out what his father wanted to teach him. The next morning was bright and sunny, and Ethan headed to school with his usual excitement. After school, he invited Alex to play soccer with him at the nearby field. As always, Ethan, who practiced soccer almost every day, played extremely well. He scored 3 goals, leading his team to victory. On the other hand, Alex, who wasn't very familiar with soccer, struggled. He lost the ball several times and made mistakes. Despite this, everyone had a great time, including Alex. After the game, Ethan quickly went home and met his father in the garden. "Dad, I played soccer with Alex today. What's the first lesson you want to teach me?" His father smiled and said, "Tell me how the game went." Ethan described everything, from his 3 goals to how Alex wasn't very good at soccer. His father nodded and said, "You see, Ethan, Alex may not be good at soccer, but he's excellent at math. Just like you might struggle with math, but are great at soccer, everyone has different strengths and talents. And that's okay." Ethan thought about this and realized his father was right. Everyone is good at different things, and that's perfectly fine. But always curious, Ethan immediately asked about the second lesson. For the second lesson, his father said, "I want you to watch Alex carefully tomorrow at school. See how often he's doing something related to numbers or math." The following day, Ethan went to school excited about his father's new challenge. All day long, he kept an eye on Alex, noticing how often he was working with numbers. Alex was solving math problems, counting things, and even calculating change during recess. He even counted the petals on a flower. After school, Ethan played soccer again and waited until his father got home. When his father arrived, Ethan eagerly told him what he had noticed. "Dad, Alex was counting a lot today. He was doing math problems, solving puzzles, and even counting flower petals." His father smiled and said, "That's the second lesson, Ethan. Alex is good at math because he enjoys it and practices it all the time. If you want to get better at something, you need to practice it regularly, just like you do with soccer. It doesn't always have to be hard. You can start small, like counting petals on a flower. Ethan smiled, realizing that he could improve at math if he practiced, just like he had improved in soccer by playing every day. Without hesitating, he asked about the third and final lesson. His father thought for a moment and said, "For the last lesson, I want you to think about how much better Alex is at math compared to you." Ethan thought for a second and then said, "I think Alex is about 3 times better at math than I am." "All right," his father said. "For the last challenge, I want you to study math 3 times harder tomorrow." Ethan gulped nervously, but he nodded, determined to take on the challenge. The next day, after school, he sat down to study math. He pushed himself to focus intensely for an hour, but then he kept going and studied for 2 more hours, tripling his usual effort. But before he could finish, his head started to hurt, and without realizing it, he fell asleep at his desk. Later that evening, his father gently woke him up for dinner. "Come have dinner and meet me in the garden afterward," his father said. Feeling disappointed, Ethan joined his father in the garden, his head hanging low. "I'm sorry, Dad. I couldn't complete the challenge. I studied so much that my head started to hurt, and I fell asleep." His father patted him gently on the head and said, "Ethan, this is what happens when you try to master something you don't enjoy. It's hard to stay focused and consistent when you don't love what you're doing. But when you study something you love, it feels much easier, just like how you're always excited to play soccer." After a moment of silence, his father gave him the final piece of advice. "So, if you want to be really good at something, either study what you love or learn to love what you're studying." Ethan, filled with admiration for his father's wisdom, promised to carry these 3 important lessons with him for the rest of his life.